A big happy new year to Mr. Adam Gibbs. Hi, man.
Hey, Alistair, how's it going?
Good,
Happy
good.
New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I hope it is going to be a happy new year. Uh, it's we're still in a somewhat pandemic-y type situation. We're in full lockdown here in Scotland again. I don't know what you're like in Canada.
Right now, well, Eastern Canada, Midlands, Ontario, and Quebec are the worst for sure. The numbers keep going up, but in BC, it's slowly going down.
Okay.
So they're optimistic. People in British Columbia, well, we don't have the population that you guys, well,
Well, not
south
us.
and have.
Where we are, it's not a big issue, but we've got a kind of carte blanche sort of. All of Scotland has been put into lockdown as a show of solidarity, I think, for the Central Belt.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. In Canada, it hasn't. Well, in British Columbia, it hasn't been too bad. Alberta, the numbers keep going up. It it's a strange thing. Some people just don't seem to get it for whatever reason. It's all about trying to keep the numbers down for the hospitals. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And but anyway, people in British Columbia seem pretty good about it overall. So
Yes, I mean, we won't make this a big rant about COVID and so
no,
forth.
I think people are just sick and tired of hearing about it.
Well, it's another one of these polarizing discussions as well. So we will try and steer away from that. Although photography in its own way can be quite polarizing. We were talking before we started recording about how many different types of photography there are these days and how it seems to be polarizing. And one of the things that came up was the International Landscape Photographer of the Year competition, which was announced a few months ago now. And I think both of us at the time commented that the winners and this were of a style that's probably this more contemporary, modern, eye-catching sort of glorifying the landscape type style, I suppose. Whereas when you won it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was a kind of quiet voice win, really.
Yeah, as I said, I was really quite surprised when I won that competition because photography or landscape photography has definitely gone. I don't want to undermine it because it is valid, but to me it seems it's more about the epicness and how far can we push the boundaries to the point where it's more digital art. And I think in that digital art, the art of actually of photography is kind of a bit lost. You know, the art of using a camera, and I think that's why there's been a resurgence in film, is
Mhm.
because it's a whole process from the very start to actually loading the film. I mean, I remember in Iceland, you had, you know, you screwed up that film, but I mean, it's a whole process, and it was the same with the 4x5, and I think people are going back to that because it's more about the photography than the actual end result. I personally, because it never used to be landscape photography. It was always nature photography, and nature photography could be wildlife, close-ups, landscape. I mean, it was all in one kind of. It was just all in one compartment. But now it's been divided up into these little sections. You know, either you're into close-up photography or wildlife, or which is kind of strange in a way because it's all nature.
Mm.
But the thing is with nature photography, and this is the thing that kind of worries me a little bit, is that for me anyway, the nature comes first, the actual subject itself, and then the photography is kind of secondary. Well, if you start mucking about and you're making it look more glorified or glorified than it actually is, then what are we trying to represent here? Are we trying to represent nature, or are we just representing some form of nature that we kind of made up in our mind's eye? And it's kind of a fine line there, I think. I don't know. I mean, what's your perspective on it?
Well, I think the first thing that's worth pointing out, I mean, this is the 26th episode of Vision and Light. So it started nearly a year ago with you and I just, you know, talking crap to each other and recording it. And it kind of evolved into a big thing. And over all those months, I've had a really diverse group of people on, from some of the old timers like Charlie Kramer and Bill Neal, through to the sort of more young and up and coming people who are sort of really influencing the whole scene. And the thing that has to be said straight up front is this is just our opinion. We're just a couple of old guys who are voicing our opinions, and it's not a judgment. It's just our perspective on things. So
Right.
we don't need a bunch of hate, you know, and we're not trying to stir up polarizing
No,
opinions and
not
stuff
at
like
all.
that.
And I mean, that's the problem I find is that on a lot of, well, like I don't go on Facebook, but you know, you get these divisions on these chat groups, and people just get so emotional and uptight about it. I'm like, well, it's, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, it is just photography, and it's a hobby for most people, and it's supposed to be an enjoyable hobby. So why get all bent out of shape over it? I mean, if people want to spend all their time behind a computer, and I mean, hats off to them. I mean, if they enjoy it, then why not? But what I'm saying is that when it comes to nature photography, for me, it just kind of, it ends up being a really, the departure is just so great now that it just doesn't look real anymore. And it isn't real in a lot of cases. It's really taken it another step.
Well, I think this is it. I mean, my perspective on the whole thing, and I've written about this quite a lot over the years, which is back when I got into digital photography, so in the sort of early 2000s, all the way through that first decade was about overcoming the limitations of the tool. So it was dynamic range or focus. You know, lenses have a finite amount of depth of field in them related to their focal length and their aperture. And it was about overcoming the limitations of the tool to try and make photographs that were more like how I was experiencing the world. So dynamic range blending and all of this sort of exposure blending and stuff. And obviously that led to the whole HDR scene. And there was people like Royce Howland out of Calgary who was doing incredible tone mapping work to make super realistic kind of HDR, but very realistic HDR. Whereas I went down the other route, I went down the kind of Tony Kuiper, Sean Bagshaw, blending multiple exposures and trying to do it skillfully to make it look seamless, to overcome the limitations of dynamic range. Now, obviously what then happened is that we learned how to make reality better than it was perceived. And there was stuff like the light bleed technique, you know, filtering soft light in from where the sun would be to make it look more hazy and glowy. And and it got to the point where we were no longer giving nature a slight helping hand. We were physically manipulating images to the point that the experience was no longer truly being represented. So the photograph became something way more than the event. And then the next step along that line was just compositing in bits to suit your needs. So there wasn't any clouds, stick some clouds in. The foreground wasn't very good, use another foreground, and all of those types of things, or Milky Ways over shots that were taken during the day and all of those sorts of things. So they're genuine composites. That's digital art. It's not photography really, although we're using photographs as a raw component. Now, at some point, there's a line that's crossed between real photography and digital art. Now, I think the biggest issue for me is that it's the question of misrepresentation. Because the argument for people who do this type of photography is, well, people know that it's not real, but the truth of the matter is they don't.
No, they don't. And there's been quite a few times where I felt quite uncomfortable because I've gone out of my way to create something that wasn't really in front of me to start with. But on some of these, especially on social media, you don't really have the opportunity to really say, well, this is a far departure from reality. And then you get all these comments saying, oh, well, you had such beautiful light, or you had this and that. And you think, well, actually, no, it wasn't like that at all. It's a total fabrication of what was there. And it really makes me feel quite uncomfortable, because I don't want to feel like I'm deceiving people. But at the same time, you know, you can't explain yourself every time you post an image or put something online.
Well, and even if you do, not everyone reads comments. Not everyone reads the dialogue that goes along with images. People just look at that, hit the like button, hit the comment button, and wade in. Now, I think the question that comes to mind is, why are we making photographs, and what are they for? And is popularity such a driving force now? And is it the competition with our peers that forces people into this situation where it's like, well, okay, that person's got a photograph of Kirkafell and Snaefell's Nest, and it's got quite a nice Milky Way over the top of it, or not Milky Way, an aurora. If I'm going to compete in this marketplace, then my aurora over there has to be better. So I'll use one that I took over at Jökulsárlón the week before, and I'll pitch that one over there because it's a better composition, and therefore the image is just like, oh wow, that's just insane. That's the best aurora over Kirkafell ever, and you know there's a pressure there to perform if you want to fill workshops, if you want to sell ebooks, if you want to try and make a living in this very, very difficult marketplace, and how to make a living.
To some degree, I think, especially for people that are just starting out, I think. I mean, from my position, I mean, I guess because I'm a little bit older, and I don't really have an awful lot to prove to anybody anymore. I mean, I've always kind of followed life at my own beat of the old drum there. That's probably why I've always been piss poor and I just kind of do my own thing. But I don't know. I mean, photography for me has always been a very personal thing. I think I never really thought about it, but I think it has, because I go out there and I just do what I want to do. Even when I post images on social media or do my videos, I mean, whoever wants to watch them, or whoever wants to look at them and comment on them, I mean, I appreciate it, but that's not what I live for. And I mean, I know exactly when I put something online, whether it's going to draw a lot of attention or not. But that's not really why I put them on there. I just want to share my vision with people. Kind of get veering off here. I don't know. It's a strange thing. I think for people just starting out, they really want to impress, but then you kind of think to yourself, well, okay, so you might fill up a workshop or whatever, but you're kind of giving people a false interpretation of something that never really happened. And people are going to go out with you expecting those things to happen, and they just don't. I mean, it's funny because I see all these epic images online, and then I thought, well, I've been photographing for close to 30 years now, and I've never seen light like that. And that's not to say it doesn't happen, but you kind of think, well, you know, I mean, come on. I don't know.
Well, you know, and listen, I think I've been thinking a lot about this recently. We had a bereavement in the family over Christmas, and you know, it always makes you think. You know, you always kind of reflect on that person's life. And one of the things that was in my heart and mind the whole time during it, because it was my mother's sister that passed away, so obviously it affected my mum very, very badly. And one of the things I thought about a lot is that, what's that person's legacy? And the whole family, none of us could find a single bad thing to say about my aunt. You know, she was just this lovely, lovely person who had this huge heart and was so generous with her time and her affection and her energy. And so I started thinking to myself, well, what's our legacy? You know, and I think this is how we conduct our business, is that for me, integrity is a hugely important thing, as it is for you. And that's just what you were saying, is that you're that need to be true to yourself, even though it affects the sort of financial side of life, you know, not having, you know, a $5 million property on the water on Vancouver Island, you know, and driving around in a 50 grand pickup truck. Those sacrifices are the price of integrity to a certain extent. And I think that says a lot about people, you know, whereas it seems that your integrity and your love of the wilderness is your key driving force to be a photographer.
Definitely. I mean, well, people, you know, well, as you know, I just bought the Fuji GFX 100, and people have said to me, wow, it must be nice to be making all that money. And I'm thinking, and I say, well, yeah, but I'm driving a 95 Mitsubishi Delica. I mean, it depends where your priorities are, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wear the same clothes every day, pretty much. I'm wearing the same clothes that I wore in my videos last week.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on where your priorities are and how you want to live your life. I mean, I'm not saying that photography is my life, but it's definitely my life is definitely driven by photography and wilderness. I mean, that's pretty much my life.
Yeah.
That's how I live. Right now, I mean, I'm just doing videos during the week and then going out and coming and sitting in my office and talking to you now and then. And, you know, I mean, it's a lifestyle. It's not, how can I put this? It's, even though it's my job, it's a lifestyle that I've chosen. And when people ask me, they say, well, you know, how do you make it as a photographer as a living? And I say, well, it's a terrible choice for a living, but if you love the lifestyle, then yeah, you should go for it, you know. And I do think that this kind of trends towards the digital art more than the actual photography side of things. I don't know. I think I don't know if it'll last or if it'll just keep continuing to evolve.
Well, there has to
I'm
be
not,
an end point, you know, there has to be a natural end point where you can't make it look any more insane than it is already. You know, I
well,
see
it was funny.
what's happening. You know, you look at the number of people out there who are doing this small scene intimate photography. Jennifer Renwick is a great example. Sarah Marino, Alex Noriega,
Yeah,
Boss Boom, me, very much so these days. You know, there's a whole bunch of us now that are pioneers. I think your photography is quiet. You know, I think quiet is a really nice way to describe your photography, because it feels, there's a serenity to it, there's a quietness to it, there's an authenticity, there's a sense of reflection. And what else is a photograph if not the perfect reflective medium? You know, to look
right.
at something, and as the creator of it, you're looking back at a moment. You're looking back. I think I described it in one of my videos today, as it's a diary of engagement. You know, it's a pictorial diary that's just each time you press the shutter, that is you engaging with the world. So I think that quiet, reflective sense of photography is so important. And I think where we're going with the other stuff, and we're kind of hammering this to death a bit now, and we'll move on in a moment, but that other stuff, it didn't happen. You're not reflecting on a moment. You're creating um, a sensationalized version of a location that doesn't necessarily always exist in real space. And as you say, it's a very different thing. So I think we're reaching the end of that line. And I think
Yeah.
as popularity gets harder to gather, you know, to garner popularity, I think there's going to be a natural trend towards people thinking, right, I'm going to make photographs for me in the way I want them to be. And I hope so, because that's the whole basis of my business plan.
Well,
And I hope
it's funny because I saw a comment a couple of days ago. I think it was on Instagram in the stories, and someone was quite upset because they they kind of losing their mojo with photography, and they just said, well, everything on Instagram is all the same. And it's kind of true, but at the same time, you should just take inspiration from what you see. I mean, just because there's a ton of epic shots on Instagram or whatever, just take it for what it is, you know. I mean, if you don't like it, then take your photography a different direction. Go do
Well,
the thing.
the thing with Insta is that we can choose who to follow,
Right.
as well. So I think if people's threads are filled of imagery that they don't like, they should reconsider who they're following.
Yeah, and I mean, if you love to go to like places like I don't know, the Canadian Rockies and photograph popular areas or whatever, and you enjoy that, then yeah, that's what you should do. Definitely. If you like to go to Moraine Lake and attend, I mean, it's absolutely stunning.
Yep.
If that's what you enjoy, then yes, you should definitely do that. I mean, don't not do it just because everybody else is doing it. If that's what you enjoy, it's just for me. I mean, I mean, I used to do all those scenes as well when I first started, but now it's got to the point where I'm kind of like, well, I mean, I've been to the Rockies and the islands so many times, different areas, that you keep going back. After a while, you get a bit tired. You want to do something a little bit different. Like lately, I've started to do a bit more, a little bit of black and white with the photographs from the Gobi. And you know, some people say, well, you're just copying Alistair. Well, yeah, maybe I am, but Alistair's inspired me to try a bit of black and white with the sand dunes. Why not? I mean, if that's what I enjoy, then
yeah,
anyway,
I need to get my book out before you. Otherwise, that's it. It's Adam Gibbs, King of the Gobi. Yeah, then we won't be friends anymore. So what we'll do is we'll call this a wrap for part 1 of our chat, and then people can tune in next week for part 2. So you and I can recharge our coffee cups and or tea in your case, and we'll pick this up in a moment. So thank you very much, Adam, so far.
Yeah, I hope people don't mind my ramblings.
I think we're both a bit ranty today.